A meal to D4. It started as just another night for Nathan Hayes, a man of routine who lived a quiet life in the suburbs. He didn't consider himself adventurous, certainly not when it came to food. For as long as he could remember, Nathan stuck to his nightly ritual: a late shift at the office, a quick workout at the gym, and dinner at the same fast food restaurant near his apartment. The fluorescent lights of Burger Haven were a comforting beacon on his otherwise monotonous days. But that night, something felt different. As Nathan stepped into the familiar space, the scent of greasy fries and char-grilled patties hit his senses like always. Yet, he noticed a subtle tension in the air. The usual cashier, a friendly college kid named Alex, was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a middle-aged woman stood behind the counter. She was petite, but carried an unsettling air of authority. Her name tag read Margaret, and her piercing gray eyes seemed to track his every movement. "Welcome to Burger Haven," she said, her voice honeyed but with a sharp edge. "What can I get for you tonight?" Nathan hesitated. Margaret's smile was too wide and didn't quite reach her eyes. Brushing off the unease, he ordered his usual: a double cheeseburger, fries, and a soda. As he waited for his food, Margaret leaned over the counter, her gray eyes unblinking. "So, Nathan," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you are quite the creature of habit, aren't you?" He froze. "How do you know my name?" Margaret chuckled softly, the sound grating against his nerves. "It's my job to know my regulars," she replied, sliding the tray toward him with a deliberate slowness. Her fingers brushed his hand a fleeting touch, yet it felt like ice crawling across his skin. Nathan left the counter quickly, settling into his usual booth by the window. The fries tasted off that night, their salty crunch overshadowed by a metallic tang he couldn't place. He glanced toward the counter. Margaret was staring at him again, her smile unwavering. Unease coiled in his stomach, and he decided to finish his meal as fast as possible. Over the next week, Margaret's presence became a constant. She was always working the register, no matter what time Nathan visited. Her small talk grew stranger, each time veering into deeply personal questions that left him squirming. "Do you live alone? Have you ever thought about how fragile life is? Do you ever get lonely?" Nathan's discomfort turned into paranoia. He began avoiding Burger Haven, opting for other restaurants farther from home. But Margaret's face haunted him. Her unsettling gaze burned into his memory. One Friday evening, Nathan gave in to nostalgia and ventured back to Burger Haven, convincing himself he was being ridiculous. When he walked through the door, his heart sank. Margaret was there, her expression triumphant, as if she'd been waiting for him. "Nathan, long time no see," she said, her tone overly familiar. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me." The way she emphasized me sent a shiver down his spine. Things took a darker turn 2 nights later. Nathan was returning home from a late run when he heard footsteps behind him. The quiet suburban street was empty, the only light coming from dim street. He quickened his pace, but the footsteps matched his rhythm, growing louder with each step. When he turned around, there was no one there. That night, sleep eluded him. His dreams were fragmented and chaotic, filled with images of Margaret's face. He woke up in a cold sweat, the faint sound of a woman's laughter lingering in the air. Nathan's breaking point came a week later. Returning from the gym, he found a greasy Burger Haven bag on his door. Inside was his usual order, neatly packed, but the fries were arranged to spell out a chilling message. "See you soon." Panicked, Nathan called the police. The officer, who arrived, a burly man named Detective Collins, listened patiently as Nathan recounted the strange event. Collins seemed skeptical, but agreed to visit Burger Haven with him the next. When they arrived, Nathan's blood ran cold. The restaurant was closed, its windows boarded up. A weathered sign on the door read, "Permanently closed." "That's impossible," Nathan stammered. "I was just here last week. Margaret was here." Collins gave him a sympathetic, "Son, this place shut down over 6 months ago." "Margaret? She died last year in a fire that burned down her house. You've probably heard stories. Small towns love their ghost tale." Nathan shook his head, his mind racing. How could this be? He'd spoken to Margaret, seen her, touched. Desperation clawed at him as he tried to explain. But Collins dismissed it as stress and exhaustion. That night, Nathan locked every door and window, triple-checking each one before retreating to his bedroom. Despite his precautions, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Hours passed as shadows danced on his walls. Around 3 a.m., a soft knock echoed through his apartment. Heart pounding, Nathan crept to the door and peered through the peephole. No one was there. But when he turned back, Margaret was standing in his living room. Her gray eyes glinted in the darkness, her smile wider than ever. "I told you we'd see each other soon," she would. Nathan stumbled backward, his breath hitching. "What do you want from me?" He managed to choke. Margaret stepped closer, her form flickering like static on a broken television. "You've been so loyal, Nathan, so predictable. I just wanted to thank you personally." Her voice was a cacophony of whispers, each word layered with malice. Nathan backed into a corner, frantically searching for something to defend himself. His hands found a heavy lamp, and he swung it wildly. The lamp passed through her as if she were made of smoke. Margaret laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "You can't get rid of me that easily." The next morning, Nathan's neighbor found him sitting on his porch, pale and trembling. He refused to enter his apartment again, claiming it was cursed. Over the following weeks, he sold all his belongings and moved to another city, far away from Burke. But the nightmares never stopped. Every time he closed his eyes, Margaret was there, her gray eyes gleaming, her smile too wide. And every so often, Nathan would wake to find a greasy bag of fries on his bedside table. The words, "See you soon," spelled out in salt. Nathan Hayes became a recluse, his life consumed by fear. He learned too late that some routines can be deadly, that not every friendly face hides good intent. Somewhere in the shadows, Margaret was still waiting, her laugh echoing. The end.